middies. We're going to be finishing up. Your assignment is going to be to copy this into your guided notes, watch the video lecture, as obviously as you're watching right now. Um, so we're going to kind of get at it now. We should have left off somewhere around here for crime scene investigation. Again, copy this in your guided notes. I will be checking this. So the seven S's of a crime scene investigation, that police, detectives, and those that are on the crime scene, they must follow. So obviously you have secure the scene is most important, making sure that the evidence cannot be tampered with or changed in some way. You want to keep it in its most basic state as you can. So securing the scene is very important. You want to separate witnesses. You want to scan the scene to see if you see anything that's abnormal, whether it's people, witnesses, evidence, etc. You want to see the scene, walk around it, do a perimeter. You want to sketch the scene as you see it. You want to search for evidence and secure and collect evidence. So these are some things that we're talking about more. All right, so one is securing the scene. The first responding police officers must make sure that the scene is secure by first making sure all individuals in the area are safe, and second, by preserving evidence. And that's the most important thing. You don't want your case being thrown out because of a problem with evidence and securing the scene. So this is obviously most important, keeping it in its most natural state. So obviously, if you're the first responder at a scene, you want to make sure obtain medical assistance if it's needed. If there's suspects that are there, you would do the arrest. You want to isolate the area by, as you see, putting up the tape around the perimeter, and you often have we'll also have a secondary perimeter as well outside of that, and request any additional needs for the investigation. It could be forensics, it could be a variety of things, so you request that as well. Next, you want to separate the witnesses. You don't want your witnesses talking and collaborating. Witnesses must not be allowed to talk to one another. This prevents them from colluding and creating or making up a story. Again, you want to try and get your job as a detective is to try to get an understanding of the story. And if you're able to separate the witnesses, you're going to get each person's perspective on what happened, and from there, you create your story that way with what happened, get your testimony. The Innocence Project was created back in the 90s. Ultimately, this was created to re-examine conviction cases for people who have been convicted of various crimes, specifically murder, death penalty cases. This is when people really began to question or evaluate eyewitness testimony, and looking at advances in science and technology with DNA and fingerprinting to see if people have been wrongfully convicted of crimes. And Innocence Projects have been very, very influential over the years in overturning convictions and bringing about these crimes and helping people out that are wrongfully imprisoned. All right, so going back to this, scanning the scene. This is when forensic examiners scan the scene to see where photos should be taken. The primary and secondary crime scenes must be determined. So obviously, primary would be in the inner circle where the crime existed. You want to create a secondary one outside to make sure nobody from the public can get in. So yeah, we'll go on for that. You want to see the scene. So a crime scene examiner looks at the scene. The photography unit comes in, takes photos of the scene, both primary and secondary. Takes up close photos, as you guys can see here. It has rulers and things of that nature to approximate, the size of some of these items that can later be examined later on by other people. You want to sketch the scene as well. You want to label with the north, south, east, west. North should be labeled in a scale of distance should be included. All important objects, weapons, bodies should be measured from two immovable landmarks. So this kind of as you guys see for the sketch down here. You provide distances and a scale down there for people to look at and see. You want any other objects in the vicinity of the crime should be included: doors, windows, furniture, trees, vehicles, etc. Also include date, time, location, case number, and names. So when you search for evidence, there's different techniques on how you can do this. One is the spiral method. So you basically, here's the crime scene. So your detectives would create a spiral and search to see if they see anything in the vicinity, into the evidence. Then you have your grid method. You guys see here, you'd start here. You'd weave your way throughout the area to look for evidence. Then you have your linear. You have 2 people. And then eventually you have your quadrant or your zone search, where you break the zone, you break the area up into different quadrants, and you search through each area. All right, so securing and collecting the evidence. All evidence must be properly packaged, sealed, and labeled. As you guys can see here, you can see the name of it, what case number it is, what time. When you're packaging evidence, you're using metal or plastic forceps. Maybe you may have to be used to pick up small items. Plastic pill bottles with lids are preferred. Containers for hairs, glass, fibers, and other kinds of trace evidence. Liquids and arson remains are stored in airtight, unbreakable containers. So this is very, very important that you follow protocol and you label everything and you handle it with proper care. So again, the evidence does not get tainted. This not in really your notes, but the druggist fold. Most biological evidence is stored in breathable containers, so kind of skip that. Evidence log and chain of custody. Again, this is very important as well. Again, you don't want evidence being tampered with or messed with. So each person who comes into contact with a piece of evidence must use proper procedure, gloves, other types of safety equipment. And that person must, as you can see by the thing here, they must sign in. So they must take proper procedure and protocol in order to maintain responsible handling of evidence from a crime scene to courtroom in order for the evidence to be admissible. So if there's any hint that the evidence was tampered with, malfunctioned with, somebody who had evidence that didn't look at the log. That's why most of this evidence, guys, when you go to a police station, it's locked up in a certain room, and somebody's in charge of this room to see who comes in, who comes out, who takes the paperwork on this. Control samples should also be taken from the victim, blood, hair, etc. So analyze the evidence. This is where you take the evidence that's left over and you give it to the forensic lab. They process the evidence. They collect the evidence. So these forensics are technicians that specialize in one of the processes. So whether it's blood, ballistics, whatever the case might be, they analyze the evidence and find DNA or other types of items that the detectives are looking for. And then finally, what they typically do is they reconstruct the crime scene. Usually this is done in the lab or in an area where they basically build everything as is and they reenact what they think happened to allow them with the evidence and theories. Again, going back to what they have to prove certain things, so height, weight, etc. So they do a reenactment. Okay, so that is it for today. Thank you so much. Adios.